A Jatni, meaning a young Jat woman, was making cow dung cakes in her field, that is, preparing cow dung patties and simultaneously chewing sesame seeds in her mouth. Just then, the spoiled young son of the king passed by from there. When his eyes fell on that young beautiful woman making dung cakes, he thought of having some fun with her. With this thought, he brought his horse a little closer to her and said to the Jatni, "Hey sesame crushing and dung chewing woman, what is the name of this village?" The Jat girl was also very sharp-minded. She replied to the prince in the same manner. "O prince riding a horse, the name of this village is Telly." Hearing the Jatni's quick-witted and sharp reply, the prince's entire body burned with rage. After all, he was the king's son, and she was just an ordinary landlord's daughter. Turning red and pale with anger, the prince said to the Jatni, "How dare you? You have the audacity to give a clever reply to the king's son? I will do such a thing with you that you will remember it forever, who you messed with. I will marry you and leave you right at the 4th round of the wedding. You will neither be married nor remain a single unmarried." Saying this, the prince started to leave. But how could the Jatni let him go so easily? She said, "Stop, you arrogant offspring of the king. Now listen to me as well. You roam around acting like a great prince, right? If I don't get your own son to blacken your face, make you get beaten 7 slaps with the shoe, and crush your pride to dust, then I am not a true Jat's daughter." Hearing the Jatni's words, the prince quietly left without saying anything. Returning to the palace, he stopped eating and drinking and began a hunger strike. The king and queen became extremely worried seeing their only son's sudden changed behavior. They could not understand why the prince had suddenly stopped eating and drinking. Whenever they tried to find out the reason, he would avoid the topic every time. The king was sitting worried with these thoughts when the queen said to him, "Maharaj, he is young blood. He has just stepped into youth. Who knows, something might have happened that he doesn't want to tell his parents." The king asked, "Then what should we do now?" The queen replied, "Maharaj, call his bosom friend and send him to the prince. He will surely open his heart to him." The king found the queen's suggestion reasonable. The next day, as the queen had said, the king called the prince's close friend, informed him about his son's condition, and sent him to the prince. When the prince's bosom friend went to him and asked the reason for his distress, the prince, who was burning inside, spilled everything before him. He narrated the entire incident that had happened with the Jat girl to his bosom friend and said, "I challenged that ordinary landlord's daughter that I would marry her and leave her at the 4th round of the wedding. But now how will I fulfill this challenge?" Hearing his princely friend's words, his bosom friend laughed and said, "Oh my friend, you have stopped eating and gone on a hunger strike for such a small matter? Don't worry at all. I will talk to your father, the Maharaj, right now." The prince said with some worry, "But why would my father get involved in this wrongdoing?" His close friend replied, "You don't worry about all that, my friend." Saying this, he went to the king and, telling him half the story, said, "Maharaj, your worthy son has fallen in love with a Jat landlord's daughter from the kingdom. He is on a hunger strike because of her." Hearing his son's friend, the king said, "Oh, is that all? I will immediately send a marriage proposal to that landlord's house for the prince." In this way, the prince's close friend cleverly convinced the king by telling him only half the truth. The very next day, the king sent a marriage proposal for his son to the Jat's house through a priest. The priest immediately reached the Jat's house with the king's marriage proposal as ordered. Seeing the marriage proposal from the king's son, the Jat was taken aback for a moment. On one side was the king's son, and on the other, they were ordinary landlords. He fell into deep thought. His heart was not ready to accept this alliance. But how could he have the courage to refuse the king's order? In the end, he gave his consent for the marriage. When the Jat girl Jatni came to know about it, she became alert in her mind without telling anything to her father. She knew that the king's son would definitely do something wrong. On the fixed date, the prince arrived at the Jat's house with the wedding procession. The priest chanted mantras and called the girl. The wedding rituals began according to tradition. As per custom, when the couple took the rounds, the prince did nothing till the first 3 rounds were completed. But as soon as the 4th round began, he suddenly collapsed dramatically. Now his friends were already well aware of the entire plan. They immediately created a commotion, lifted the prince and shouted, "The prince has had an epilepsy attack. We will bring him back after he recovers." Saying this, they laid the prince in a palanquin and took him away right from the middle of the wedding. The Jatni was already alert. She knew the prince's intentions very well. During the fourth round, when the prince pretended to fall down and the entire drama unfolded, she quietly took out the prince's dagger. After they left, the Jat's daughter completed the remaining rounds of the marriage using the prince's own dagger. In this way, the marriage was completed. Now it was her turn for revenge. After deceiving and leaving the Jat girl in the middle of the wedding, the prince returned to the royal palace. Why would he go back to bring her? He had only wanted to fulfill his challenge. The Jat also did not have the courage to go before the king and complain about the injustice done to his daughter. Day by day, the Jat's daughter started drying up in deep worry. Deep inside, it kept pricking her that the king's son had fulfilled his word by leaving her in the middle of the wedding. Now how would she fulfill her own word? Finally, the Jatni made a plan. To execute her plan, she went to her father and said, "Father, for some days my mind has been restless. If you permit, I wish to go on a pilgrimage for mental peace." The Jat thought that visiting pilgrimage places would help his daughter forget the incident that had happened with her. He happily gave her permission to go on the pilgrimage and also gave her a lot of money for her travel expenses. The Jat's daughter left home for the pilgrimage. But did she really want to go on a pilgrimage? No, she wanted to take revenge on the king's son. Eventually, according to her plan, she went and settled in the same city where the king, the father of that prince, ruled. Using the money given by her father, the Jatni bought a decent house inside the city. She changed her appearance, took on the form of a milkmaid Gujari, and started living in the king's city. She also bought some high-quality cows. As per her plan, she fed her cows fresh green fodder along with plenty of dry fruits. Due to eating dry fruits, the cows started giving extremely high-quality milk. The Jatni, now in the guise of a milkmaid, began setting curd from that pure milk. In the evening, she would dress up nicely and go to the city square to sell her curd. Whoever came to buy curd from this milkmaid and asked the price, she would quote 100 rupees for the curd. In those days, 100 rupees was a very large amount. One day, when the prince's friend was passing through the square, he also asked the price of curd from the Jatni disguised as a milkmaid. Hearing the price of 100 rupees, he thought it must be something special. He bought the curd from the milkmaid and took it to the royal palace. He gave it to the prince. When the prince tasted the curd, his senses were delighted. Even though he was a prince, he had never eaten such delicious curd before. Overwhelmed by the taste of the curd, when he asked his friend the secret behind such extraordinarily tasty curd, his friend told him the whole story. The prince thought, if the curd made by her is so tasty and excellent, how beautiful must she herself be? With this thought, he decided to go to the milkmaid himself the next day. The milkmaid, as usual, was standing in the city square selling her curd. Just then, the prince came to her and asked for curd. He could not recognize her at all that this milkmaid was none other than the same Jatni whom he had abandoned in the middle of their wedding. The king's son became infatuated with the beauty of the milkmaid. The milkmaid had planned from the very beginning to trap the king's son in her web. Now the prince started coming to her every day on the pretext of buying curd. One day, the milkmaid invited him to her residence. Their love blossomed, and they started meeting secretly at her isolated residence. In this way, the milkmaid Jatni became pregnant. The next time when the prince came to her, she sought his permission to go back to her home, saying, "Now I must go back to my house. My family must be very worried as I have been away for a long time." The prince tried his best to stop her, but she did not agree. Finally, the milkmaid assured him that she would meet him again very soon. Agreeing to her words, the prince removed his ring and gave it to her as a token, saying, "The next time you come to our kingdom, you don't need to stay anywhere outside. Just show this ring of mine to the guards and come straight to the royal palace." Taking the prince's ring, the Jatni returned to her village, to her father's house. At the right time, the Jatni gave birth to a very healthy and radiant son. After the birth of the son, she also told her entire plan to her father. Time passed at its own pace. The Jatni took special care of her son's diet, due to which he grew extraordinarily. The radiant boy born to the Jatni was smarter and stronger than all the boys of his age. In games and sports he would often beat the other boys who played with him. One day, while playing, he made a Brahmin boy his horse and rode on his back. He beat the boy who was acting as the horse very badly. Crying and screaming, the Brahmin boy went home and told the entire incident to his mother. His mother became furious. In extreme anger, she went to the Jat's house and lashed out at the Jatni. "Where have you brought this boy from? He has made the lives of all the boys in the village miserable. Whenever he feels like it, he beats them. Whenever he feels like it, he hits them. Who knows whose bastard son he is?" The Brahmin woman was angrily saying all this to the Jatni when the Jatni's son also heard the entire conversation. His entire body burned with rage. After the Brahmin woman left, he went to his mother, red and pale with anger, and said, "Either tell me my father's name right now, or I will kill you. I will forget that you are my mother." Hearing these words from her son's mouth, the mother's eyes automatically filled with tears. She said, "I will definitely tell you your father's name. But I have one condition." The boy asked in surprise, "What condition?" Then the Jatni revealed the entire truth to her son, how her arrogant prince father, in order to fulfill his challenge, had deceitfully left her in the middle of the wedding. And how, to break his pride, she had disguised herself as a milkmaid and met him again. After listening to his mother's entire story, the boy was stunned. He said, "Forgive me, mother. I misunderstood you after listening to that Brahmin woman. I promise you that I will not let your words go in vain. I will not only blacken my arrogant father's face but will also beat him with 14 slaps with shoe, 7 in your name and 7 in my name." After making this promise to his mother, the Jatni's son set off towards his father's city. On the other side, after his father's death, the prince had taken over the kingdom. He was no longer a prince but the full-fledged king of the entire state. When the Jatni's son reached his father's city, he came to know that his father was now the king there. The boy made a firm resolution in his mind that even though his father was the king, he would definitely fulfill his promise and teach him a lesson. After roaming around the entire city and observing it well, the Jatni's son took shelter at the house of an old female gardener Malini. At first, the old woman tried to turn him away, but when the boy gave her a gold coin, she happily allowed him to stay. At night, the Jatni's son pasted posters all over the city that read, "I am cleverer of the clever. All you people of this city combined were only 1.5 clever, but now I am 2.5 clever," had arrived. "No one can cheat me." By this he openly challenged the entire city that he won't get cheated because he is the one who cheats others. When this open challenge reached the king's ears, it hurt his ego badly. The furious king announced that whoever catches this cleverer would be rewarded generously. As soon as the king's announcement spread across the city, people from the Meena community took up the challenge of catching. In the olden days, the Meena community was considered a brave and warrior caste. The Meenas came before the king and said with great confidence, "We will catch this wicked cleverer and present him before you." The king happily wished them luck. On the other side, the cleverer, meaning the Jatni's son, asked the old gardener woman, "Mother, what is this commotion in the city today?" The old woman replied, "O son, what should I tell you? Some cleverer has come to the city and the Meena people have taken the responsibility of catching him." Hearing the old woman's words, Cleverer smiled shrewdly and said, "Oh, so that's the matter." As soon as night fell, the Meenas set out in the city for vigilance. Meanwhile, the Cleverer disguised himself as an astrologer and reached the Meenas' houses. He gathered their wives and told them, "Tonight, dacoits are going to attack your houses. They will be wearing only kacha and will be bald. So keep bricks and stones ready in advance. When they try to enter the house claiming to be the owners, pelt them with bricks and stones." In this way, the Cleverer in the guise of an astrologer cleverly fooled the Meenas' wives and left from there. He then disguised himself as a barber and sat down near a pond. While roaming around, when the Meenas reached the pond, they asked him, "Who are you? And what are you doing here at this time?" The Cleverer, in the guise of a barber, replied, "Actually, tonight the Cleverer is coming to me to get his beard trimmed. I am sitting here waiting for him." Hearing the barber's words, the Meenas' eyes lit up. They said, "The Cleverer is coming. We will also hide here and wait for him." The barber, meaning the Cleverer, said, "No, if you stay like this, he will recognize you. Let me do one thing. I will cut your hair and make all of you bald. Then you all enter the pond and keep only your heads above water. Because you will be bald, the Cleverer won't be able to recognize you. As soon as he comes, you can catch him immediately. And one more thing, when you get the reward from the king for catching the Cleverer, don't forget me." In this way, the Cleverer in the guise of a barber fooled the Meenas as well. They happily did as he said. When they became bald and entered the water, the cleverer quietly picked up all their clothes and disappeared, leaving them waiting for him in the pond. When more than half the night had passed while waiting for the cleverer in the pond, their senses finally returned. They realized that the crooked barber was probably the cleverer himself who had fooled all of them. They came out of the pond sadly, only to find that their clothes were also missing. The poor men had no choice but to head home wearing only their kacha. As soon as they reached home, their wives, who were already ready with bricks and stones, welcomed their husbands by pelting them. The men kept shouting that they were their husbands, but the women did not stop. Only when morning came did the wives recognize their husbands and take them inside the houses. When the king came to know about the entire incident, he was left fuming with anger and embarrassment. He thought that this cleverer was indeed very clever. Those who had taken up the challenge to catch him were instead made fools by him. Impressed by cleverer's intelligence, the king doubled the reward amount. Attracted by the doubled reward, the city Kotwal, meaning the police chief, appeared before the king and said, "Maharaj, give me a chance too. I will catch that scoundrel and lay him at your feet." The king wished the Kotwal good luck as well. Meanwhile, the Jatni's son casually asked the old gardener woman and found out that today the city Kotwal had taken up the challenge to catch him. As evening fell, the Kotwal set out on patrol. And here, the Jatni's son disguised himself as an old woman, wearing torn old clothes, and sat in the city square grinding grains. When the Kotwal passed by from there and saw the old woman, he said, "Hey old woman, what are you doing here at this time?" The cleverer, in the guise of the old woman, replied in a trembling voice like an old lady, "What should I tell you, sir? The cleverer came and assigned me the work of grinding grains for his horse. I am busy doing that. He will come any moment now." Hearing the old woman's words, the city Kotwal became excited. He said, "You move aside, old mother, and give me these clothes of yours." In this way, the Kotwal wore the old woman's clothes and started grinding grains in the city square. The cleverer in the old woman's form took the Kotwal's clothes and quietly disappeared from there. The Kotwal kept sitting in the city square the entire night, grinding grains. When dawn began to break, people passing by started laughing at the Kotwal, saying, "What has happened to the Kotwal today that he is sitting in the square grinding grains like a buffalo?" Seeing people laughing at him, the Kotwal immediately threw away all the things and sat holding his head in shame. "That bastard fooled me too by disguising himself as an old woman." When the king came to know about this entire incident, he was left grinding his teeth in anger. The Jatni's son had completely humiliated the king. When the Meena community tried to catch him, he shaved their heads and got their own wives to pelt them with bricks and stones. When the city Kotwal tried to catch him, he taught him a lesson by making him grind grains in the middle of the square, turning him into a laughing stock in front of the entire city. After these incidents, the fear of the cleverer spread so much across the city that no citizen was ready to come forward to catch him anymore. People had realized that if they went to catch Dai Chail, they would end up suffering themselves. The king was also extremely troubled by him. Finally, the king announced that whoever catches him would be given half the kingdom as a reward. Lured by the offer of half the kingdom, this time the fodder, meaning a military commander, came forward with courage. With great confidence, he said to the king, "Don't worry, Maharaj. So far that cleverer has not faced me. Tomorrow morning he will be lying at your feet." The king, with a heavy heart, also wished the fodder good luck. Meanwhile, the Jatni's son once again casually asked the old gardener woman, "Hey old mother, who has taken up the challenge to catch the cleverer this time?" The old gardener woman replied in a low voice, "Son, this time the fodder has taken the responsibility of catching that cleverer." The old woman replied, "There are only 3 people in the family, the fodder himself, his wife, and their daughter. It has been 12 years since her marriage, but her husband has never come back to take her. The poor girl is very unfortunate." Hearing the old gardener woman's words, the Jatni's son made a clever plan to teach the fodder a lesson as well. He quietly disguised himself as an astrologer and started roaming around the fodder's house, repeatedly announcing in a loud voice, "Come and get your fortune told. When will the person who left return? Will he return or not? The astrologer knows everything." After he had circled the fodder's house 3 or 4 times, the fodder came outside. He called the astrologer inside and narrated his sorrow. "Oh astrologer, it has been 12 years since my daughter's marriage, but my son-in-law has still not returned to take her away." Hearing the father, the Jatni's son said, "Your luck is actually saying something completely different. Very soon your fortunes are about to open up." Hearing this, the father said with both joy and surprise, "How, astrologer Baba? Please explain in more detail." The astrologer replied, "Your son-in-law has become a very big and successful merchant. According to your destiny, he is arriving at your house tonight itself. So stay alert tonight." The father became extremely happy. He gave the astrologer a good reward and sent him off. Any father whose grown-up daughter has been sitting at home for 12 to 14 years after marriage, if he is told that his son-in-law is finally coming tonight to take her, how can he possibly sleep? The father was in exactly that state. He stayed wide awake the whole night, waiting eagerly for his son-in-law. When night fell, the Jatni's son disguised himself as a merchant and started roaming in front of the father's house, saying loudly, "My marriage took place somewhere around here. I don't remember exactly which house it was." The father and his family were already alert and waiting for the son-in-law. The father immediately came out and said, "How would you remember after so many years?" He respectfully welcomed him inside the house and treated him with great hospitality. He arranged a comfortable bed for him in the upper chamber of the house. After making proper arrangements for the son-in-law, the father himself went out in search of the cleverer. At midnight, the Jatni's son woke up the father's sleeping daughter, showed her a knife and threatened her, "If you make even the slightest sound, I will kill you." He took off all her jewelry. While leaving, he tied the father's daughter to the bed, stuffed a cloth in her mouth, and said, "Go and tell your father that you were wandering around looking for the cleverer outside. But he came to your house as your son-in-law." Saying this, he tied her in the house. The Jatni's son took all the money and valuables and disappeared. When morning came and the entire truth was revealed, even the father beat his head in despair. When the news reached the king, his patience also broke. "These bastards are all useless. None of them are worth anything." Finally, the king himself took up the challenge of catching the cleverer. Meanwhile, the Jatni's son went to the old Malini and gave her a large amount of the looted wealth. He said, "Mother? Who has taken up the challenge today to catch the cleverer?" The Malini replied, "O son, what should I tell you? That cleverer has ruined the sleep of the entire city. Now even the king himself has taken the pledge to catch him." Hearing the Malini's words, the cleverer laughed heartily and said, "Oh, so today the king Sahib himself is going to come out to catch the cleverer. I have been waiting for this day from the very beginning." When night fell, the king ordered all 4 gates of the city to be closed. He placed a wooden execution post at the last gate for punishing criminals and began guarding there himself. On the other side, the Jatni's son disguised himself as an extremely beautiful young girl. He took a puja thali, meaning a prayer plate, in his hands and set out into the city. When this beautiful young woman passed near the king was greatly astonished. He thought, "Where is this young woman going so late at night with a puja thali in her hands?" The king called out and stopped her, asking, "Who are you and where are you going so late at night?" The young woman replied with full confidence and fearlessness, "I am the Kotwal's daughter." The king said, "Where are you going so late?" The young woman, showing some modesty, said, "Your Majesty, you already know that last night that wicked cleverer came to our house. Along with looting, he also violated my chastity. Now I am going to the nearby Bhairav temple to become pure again. With Bhairavji's blessings, my stigma will be removed." Saying this, the young woman, in reality the Jatni's son, left from there. A little while later, when she returned, she stopped near the king again and, pointing towards the wooden post, asked the king, "Your Majesty, what is this thing?" The king replied, "This is a ka with Macron H. Criminals are caught and tied to it. Today, I will catch that wicked cleverer and put him inside this very thing." Hearing the king's words, the young woman said with great innocence, "Your Majesty, what kind of device is this? I have never seen anything like this before. I also want to see how a criminal is locked inside it." Upon the young woman saying this, the king put one of his legs into the ka with Macron H and explained, "Look, one leg is placed in this hole, and the other leg is placed in the 4th hole, leaving 3 holes in between. Then this ka with Macron H is closed and locked." The young woman said, "Your Majesty, I want to see it properly. Please lock me in at once and show me." Seeing the young woman's innocent pleading, The king said, "How can I lock you in this cave with Macron-H? Your delicate hands and feet will get bruised. If you are so eager to see it, then let me get inside it myself and show you." Saying this, the king put both of his feet and hands inside the cave with Macron-H. The young woman who was actually the Jatni's son had been waiting for this exact moment. He immediately closed the cave with Macron-H and locked it tightly. The king said, "What are you doing? Now take me out. Open this lock." Then the Jatni's son said, "I am not Kotval daughter or anything. I am the one you are looking for, so-called cleverer." Hearing this, the king's eyes widened in shock and remained frozen. The Jatni's son took some black soot from his pocket and smeared it all over the king's face. Then he beat him 7 slpas with shoe, saying, "These are for my mother's name." And once again, he gave him another set of 7 shoe slaps one after another and said, "These are for my name." After taking his revenge properly in this manner, the Jatni's son left the king in that same condition and disappeared from there. The poor king suffered great humiliation. When morning came, people took him out of the cave with Macron-H. By now, even the king had been trapped by the cleverer, but the king became his admirer. But one thing was still eating him from inside. He kept thinking, "I don't even know that boy. Then why did he say while beating me with shoes, 7 for my mother's name and 7 for my name?" The next day, the king had an announcement made throughout the city: all the crimes of cleverer are forgiven. He should present himself in the royal court. King Sahib is eager to reward him generously. When the Jatni's son heard this announcement, he appeared in the royal court. "Your Majesty, I am that cleverer." Seeing him, the king was stunned. He had very little expectation that he would actually come. For some time, the king remained lost in thoughts with his mouth open, staring at him in amazement. Then, when the king asked him the reason for beating him with shoes, he narrated the entire story from the beginning till now in front of the king. After listening to everything, the king said to him, "So I had left the marriage ceremony midway. Then how did she become my wife and you my son?" The Jatni's son replied, "Your Majesty, when you pretended to faint in the middle of the marriage rounds, at that very moment, my mother, who was already alert, took out your dagger. After you left, she completed the remaining marriage rounds with that same dagger of yours and thus completed the marriage. As for my birth, the story of my birth will be explained by this ring of yours." The king immediately recognized his ring, which he had given to the Gujari. The king respectfully summoned the Jatni to his kingdom. He apologized to the Jatni and her son for his actions. The king accepted the cleverer as his own son, declared him the crown prince, and made the Jatni his queen. In this way, the Jatni also fulfilled her promise. They all lived together happily and joyfully. Before the conclusion, I request all of you to subscribe to the channel and please share your opinion about the story. Conclusion. This story is the tale of an arrogant person who remains intoxicated by his high position and outward show of power. The prince felt that his royal grandeur gave him the right to insult anyone. But he forgot that arrogance is a web that traps its own maker. On the other hand, the Jatni was the embodiment of patience and intelligence. She did not take immediate revenge for her insult. Instead, she waited for the right opportunity, made a well-thought-out plan, and took careful steps to protect her self-respect. She proved that real power does not lie in external means, but in inner courage and wisdom. This story gives us 4 deep lessons. Number 1, arrogance is the path to downfall. A person who insults others while drunk on his position and power will definitely fall. Number 2, patience and intelligence are invincible. Actions done in anger fail, while plans made with patience succeed. Number 3, the law of karma is unbreakable. As you sow, so shall you reap. The behavior you show to others will eventually come back to you. Number 4, truth always wins. No matter how many obstacles come, ultimately, righteousness and justice always prevail. Finally, never give place to arrogance in your life. Respect others, because every person has their own dignity and strength. And remember, whoever has patience and justice on their side, their victory is certain. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for staying with the story till the end. We will meet again soon with a new story. Until then, keep the channel subscribed.